Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about something a ton of people struggle with. How do you create cinematic shots that actually look real and not like anime? Because let's be honest, that happens way too often. People try to build these beautiful cinematic scenes, and somehow the output ends up looking like an animated fantasy movie. It's frustrating. They keep testing, tweaking, retrying, and still don't get that grounded, realistic cinematic look they're after. So today, we're making it even more challenging. We're using fantasy scenes as the example. But the mission is very clear. We want fantasy that still feels cinematic, still feels believable, still feels real, not cartoonish, not overly stylized, not animation, so let's jump right in.
In this tutorial, we're going to be using Higgesfield, which is honestly a really awesome platform. I'll drop the link in the description below. Before we jump into the project, I'm going to quickly show you where to find the image generation tools and the video generation tools. To access image generation, go to the top menu, click Image, then click Create Image. Here, you can generate images using the Nano Banana Pro model. You can also upload reference images that the new images will be built from. To access video generation, click Video at the top, and it will take you to Kling AI3. This is the model we'll be using to create the upcoming cinematic scenes. You can choose a scene length of up to 15 seconds. You can also choose the aspect ratio you want. For most cinematic scenes, we usually go with the wide format. There's also another option here called multi-shots. When you turn it on, it lets you add multiple shots with different timings inside the same scene. Just keep in mind that the total duration of all those shots combined cannot be more than 15 seconds. You can add a start frame, and for each shot, you can also add different elements. I'll explain all of that in the project we're about to go through in just a moment. So what's the idea here exactly? At the beginning, we start by generating the first frame in a professional, cinematic way, because that frame is the real foundation that the entire scene will be built on. And honestly, this is one of the most important parts of creating any cinematic scene, because it defines the overall look, the visual mood, and the direction we're going to follow after that. Then we start breaking the cinematic scene into a series of shots. Each shot becomes one part of the bigger scene, and in the end, all of those shots come together to build one complete, connected, professional-looking sequence. After that, we work on each shot separately, because every shot has its own set of elements. And those elements also get generated as high-quality images in a professional way, so we have much more control over every single detail inside the scene. So the first step we're going to do now is build our main character, and we're going to do that using Nano Banana. In this case, our character is already somewhat defined, so we can use a real reference image for them. And here, your prompt should absolutely include these three phrases if you want a truly cinematic, realistic image. Anamorphic shot. Commercial shot. Shot on Ari. These phrases work like magic when it comes to generating a cinematic-looking scene. Now we're moving into a very important step, which is creating the start frame. And like we talked about earlier, this is the foundation for everything. For this part, we're going to use three references: our character image, the dragon image, and the environment image where the scene will take place. Then add the following prompt. The dragon is carrying Daenerys and flying with her toward the island of smoke. Use a low-angle shot, as if the camera is positioned at sea level. The dragon is flying at a high altitude while carrying Daenerys. The dragon's full body should be visible. The shot should be framed from behind the dragon. Now let me show you a game-changing technique that can seriously level up your work. For locations, environments, and mythical creatures like dragons, try generating those in Midjourney, not Nano Banana. Use Nano Banana mainly for your characters. Then use Nano Banana again to place and blend those characters into the environments you already built in Midjourney. Now, from the first frame we got, we can already spot two problems. The first issue is Daenerys' position while being carried. It doesn't look natural. And the second issue is the scene itself. It still needs better lighting and stronger color grading. Then we made a small change to the prompt and generated the image again. This time we added, the dragon is carrying Daenerys, who is dead, with her body hanging head down. And that really fixed the shot. Before that, it honestly felt like the dragon was carrying a toy doll instead of a real human body. Now let's move on to the second correction, which is fixing the colors so they work better for the entire scene. In this case, we want to push the image toward a cinematic blue color tone, and we can do that by writing the following prompt. And this is the result. At this point, you can clearly see that we don't just generate the first version of the start frame and call it done. We keep refining it, improving it, and pushing it further until we get a start frame that truly works for the scene, because this frame is the base that the entire scene will be built on. And like we talked about before, a scene is not just the start frame. It also includes multiple other shots. And for each shot, you need to add the specific elements that will build that shot. Never leave a shot empty without elements, because the moment you do that, you stop controlling the scene and start leaving the result in the hands of the AI. What you're seeing right now is us building the image for the second shot. We're using the first frame as a reference, along with the environment image we generated in Midjourney. Now we're moving on to creating the element image for the third shot. And just to keep everything clear, we're still in scene 1. This entire first scene consists of 3 shots. And right now, we're working on the third shot in that scene, where the dragon is supposed to place Daenerys onto the rock. To generate this shot image, we're working with 3 references. First, the environment image created in Midjourney. Second, the start frame. And third, the character image. Then we apply the following prompt. Now we're moving into the video generation stage for the first scene. For this part, we're using Kling 3 instead of Seedance 2. The reason is simple. Kling 3 is more affordable, and with the right amount of control, you can still get very solid results from it. For this scene, we're splitting it into 3 separate shots. Each shot is set to 3 seconds. First, we add the start frame that we already created and refined. Then we place each element into the shot it belongs to. And as we covered earlier, we already generated a dedicated image for each element for each shot. You can add the element image to the shot by clicking the element button inside the shot window. Then click Create New, and from there, add at least 2 images to create the element you need. Then add the element into the shot field by typing this symbol @ and choose the element from the drop-down menu that shows up. Use the same exact method to add the element for the third shot by building it from 2 selected images. And now you've got the full scene built out with all 3 shots. You'll notice that each shot contains the elements we generated earlier. And that gives us full control over how each shot looks, which ultimately gives us full control over the final look of the scene as a whole. And these are the prompts we used for each of the 3 shots that together build the first scene. In this part, we're starting to create the first frame for scene 2. And just like we talked about earlier, this step is extremely important. Here, we're also working with 3 references. The first is the environment image from Midjourney. The second is the character image. And the third is the last image from the third shot of the first scene. Then we use the following prompt. But as you can see, the result still wasn't good enough. So I went through a lot of retries, and I kept adjusting the prompt again and again. For example, at one point, I changed the way the rising fire was described. I removed the flames completely and instead made it clear that the rock itself should look molten, with no actual fire coming out of it. So now the rock feels like it's melting from extreme heat beneath the woman without showing visible flames. And here's a really important trick. Every time I got a stronger frame, I used that frame as a reference for the next one I wanted to generate. That's one of the best ways to guide the image toward the exact shot you're trying to achieve. Then finally, once I got the frame I was happy with, I did 2 last steps. First, skin enhancement. And after that, I applied an upscale to the image. Now we're moving on to building the elements for the second shot of scene 2. And we're starting with the first image for the element, since an element typically requires 2 images. For this first image, we're generating an extreme close-up version of the first frame. That's because the motion in scene 2 will begin with the camera moving around the girl, then pushing in closer. Now, to generate the second image for that element, we use a really powerful feature in Higgesfield. We create a multi-shot sequence based on the first frame of scene 2. From there, we can pick the second image we want for the element used in the second shot. And here, that image is a closer view of the girl's face while she's asleep. Now we're moving on to generating the element images for the third shot of scene 2. Once again, we're working with 3 references here. The first is the environment image from Midjourney. The second is the character reference image. And the third is the multi-shot sequence we generated earlier. Using those, we can create the first image for the element. Then we take that final image and use the multi-shot feature to create several new angles from different directions. From those results, we can select the second image for the element used in the third shot of scene 2. And just like we did with scene 1, scene 2 will also be split into 3 shots. Then we add the elements for each shot, exactly like we explained earlier during the first scene. And that's how we fully build out scene 2 with all 3 of its shots in place. And as you can see now, the images we generated earlier to build the element are exactly what shape and control the final look of the shot. And these are the prompts we used to create the 3 shots that make up Scene 2. Now we're moving on to creating the first frame for Scene 3. To do that, we take the final element from the 3rd shot of Scene 2. Then we use the multi-shot feature to generate multiple camera angles, so we can choose the one that works best as the first frame for Scene 3. From the multi-shot sequence generated from the final element of the 3rd shot in Scene 2, we can also pull images for the element that will be placed into the 2nd shot of Scene 3. Now we're moving on to creating the images for the element that will go into the 3rd shot of Scene 3. And as you can see, we used the previous element image from the 2nd shot as a reference, then built the new element image for the 3rd shot from it. Now we're moving into the video generation stage for Scene 3. We start by placing the first frame, then in each shot, we insert the elements assigned to that shot. And like we explained earlier, each element should be built from 2 images. And these are the prompts we used for the 3 shots that build Scene 3. One important thing to notice is this. The prompts used for generating the video in each shot are mainly there to describe the camera movement, but the deeper control over what actually appears inside each shot comes from the elements we add to that shot. That's where a lot of the real control happens. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I was able to explain the workflow in a clear and useful way. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And I'll see you in the next video.